What is up, IDP Army? It's your man Jordan Rains at 50 Shades of Drunk if you are on Twitter, and we are back again with another episode of the IDP Army podcast, where of course we are talking mostly IDP, all fantasy football. Guys, gals, appreciate you being here with me today. We are going to start a series that's going to run for the next couple of weeks, probably through the next month. I'm going to try to be dropping episodes back to back to back. So we're going to be busy around here, but I want to give you guys a full 32 team preview, both sides of the ball. Nothing super duper deep, but I do want to run over, who the starting players are going to be, what we're kind of anticipating for them, ADP rankings, things of that nature. So yeah, we are going to get that started first. Before we do that, appreciate some of y'all been leaving reviews on Apple Podcasts. That's awesome. I implore the rest of you, everyone listening, please right now just click on Apple Podcasts, go leave us a 5-star rating and a review. That does a lot to help the show get more eyes on it. And as the season up is coming, we want to help more people win. We want the IDP Army to grow. There's hundreds, if not thousands of you guys out there. We need a lot more reviews. So this is me asking you. Let's go get it done. All right. So when I look at this in a couple of days, couple of weeks, we're going to have more reviews. That's going to be awesome. Maybe we'll read some off. Maybe if we can't get people doing this, we'll do a little competition. Maybe we'll do a little giveaway or something of that nature. But we will see how that goes. But if you're listening to this, if you hear this, go right now. Leave us a 5-star rating and review. Would super appreciate it. Anything else I need to talk about before we jump in? No, I guess not. So let's go ahead and jump into these teams. The first team we are going to be talking about is the Arizona Cardinals. 2020 record for the Arizona Cardinals was 8-8. Obviously, we won't get any more 8-8. So we've moved to a 17-game season, but they were 8-8 team right in the middle of the pack. Honestly, they should have been 7-9, except for the Hail Murray play, which if anyone knows me knows I really don't like that play. Notable personnel moves for the team this offseason. They did retain Cliff Kingsbury. He's still around. They added J.J. Watt, so they got some pass rush help. They added Malcolm Butler, got rid of Patrick Peterson. So, went from one falling off corner to another kind of falling off corner. Malcolm Butler can make some tackles, though, and he is pretty well versed at safety and corner, so they're going to be able to move him around if they want to, whereas Patrick Peterson was primarily an outside corner most of his career. And then they did add AJ Green. Now, what do all these guys have in common? They're all really old, but they are veterans. This is a young team with a young head coach. So it makes sense to want to address, get some veteran leadership, get some guys that are going to know what to do, what to look for on, these important games, these important situations, third downs, fourth downs, these are the guys that are going to be the playmakers for you. So they brought them in, not thinking anything really big for AJ Green's going to happen. Malcolm Butler should essentially still be a starter, and JJ Watt obviously is still really good. We never were off of him. Like I said, they lost Patrick Peterson, and then Kenyon Drake has also left the team. They added James Conner as well. So, like I said, Cliff Kingsbury, he's coming into his third year now with Kyler Murray. I think he's a little bit on the hot seat. 8-8's not going to cut it, so they're, especially with all the hype that he got coming in. So they're going to need to do a little bit more for Kyler. So let's just go ahead and actually talk about Kyler. It's his third year in the league. And the story of Kyler really comes down to the rushing yards. He's had he had over 800 this last year. He had over 500 his rookie year. And I don't think that's something that we're going to see go away from his game. Even though he said he wants to throw more, which I think he will, the fact that he is able to scramble and to make those extra yards, it's going to be a difference maker. I will say he had 11 rushing TDs in 2020, which really helped boost him up the rankings as far as scoring. He only threw for 26, which last year was not a whole lot. That number is definitely going to come down, especially with the addition of James Conner, who is going to be a goal line back. Assuming he's healthy. So I don't think the rushing yards are going to be quite as high if he rushes less. So we could see that drop down to about more like 500-600. And I think the touchdowns are going to drop down as well. He's really got to take a step forward in the passing game to be worth kind of what he's going at right now. Just for reference points, in Underdog ADP, and this today is, it's June 21st, 2021. His ADP is 53. That's quarterback 3 off the board. He really needs to put up what he did last year to be worth that. And, maybe he will pass a little bit more this year, but a lot of those rushing stats I think are going to regress. So that's a little bit heavy for me. In Fantasy Pros right now, his consensus rank is quarterback 3 as well. So for me, Kyler is not a guy that I'm willing to pay up for. And in fact, the leagues, I've had him in 1 or 2 dynasty leagues. I've traded him away because I think his value is kind of at an all-time high. So yeah, let's talk about some of his weapons. We have DeAndre Hopkins. His ADP right now on Underdog is wide receiver 4. DeAndre Hopkins is kind of in that Julio mold now, where he commands a high target share, and he's always got the yards to back it up. He is able to get up in that double-digit touchdown region, something that Julio was not really able to do in his career. 13 in 2017, 11 in 2018. Hasn't hit double digits the last 2 years. In fact, 6 this last season and only 7 in 2019. This last year was his first year with Kyler. He was able to put up 1,400 receiving yards, which, would be probably a career year for most receivers, but it's actually the third best season DeAndre Hopkins has had yardage wise. So, his catch rate is incredibly high, 71%. That was actually a career high for him. So he's catching balls that are coming in from Kyler at a high clip that are, put on him. He's getting the yards. So I think that's a fair price to pay for DeAndre Hopkins right now. I think he could go up a little bit in the touchdown department, especially since he only had 6 this last year. I don't know if 1,400 yards is going to necessarily be another thing he's going to be able to do this year, but we'll see. He's consistently getting the targets, and he's the unquestioned one on this team, and pretty much any team he'll ever go to until he hits that AJ Green type of year. Which before we get to Green, we'll talk about Rondale Moore, rookie they drafted this year. His current ADP is 144 in Underdog. Makes him the 63rd wide receiver taken. I think that's a little bit low, honestly, considering what the kind of potential and upside that we see him have. His Fantasy Pro PPR rank right now is wide receiver 73. So there's a little discrepancy there between his ADP and his rank. I think the market's a little more bullish on him than the fantasy community right now, but it's that time of the year where it was still rookie season. It's hard to overly project some of these rookies, and especially with guys like Moore, where he is on a team with a massive target hog like DeAndre Hopkins. So we'll have to see what happens there. Christian Kirk, interestingly, Christian Kirk's ADP is not that far off of Rondale Moore's. He's a wide receiver 71, and his that's one ADP of 163 right now on Underdog. His Fantasy Pros consensus ranking is 63. So there's a market discrepancy there. His Fantasy Pros ranking PPRs, they're basically flip-flopped, he and Rondale Moore. So that's kind of curious. I think there's definitely something to be said about drafting Rondale Moore definitely in Underdog at that price, especially with the kind of spike week upside that he seems to have. There's a good spot for you guys to go get you some value. And then AJ Green, he's the other projected starting wide receiver on this team on the outside. He's old, but he somehow commanded quite a few targets last year with the Bengals. He goes to another team where now he doesn't have to be the 1 or even the 2 necessarily, if Rondale Moore ends up being what he is. But we know he's a contested ball catcher, so we might see a Brandon Marshall-esque type of season out of him, or an Alphonse Jeffrey, where he just kind of shows up and he gets the red zone targets. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I think there is value to AJ Green this year, considering he's finally at an ADP that I like. Underdog ADP is at 185 right now, wide receiver 80. So, I mean, if you want a cheap player to stack late with Kyler, let's say somebody does get DeAndre Hopkins and you miss him or whatever, I think the AJ Green is going to be valuable on certain weeks this upcoming year. Am I saying go draft AJ Green? At his ADP, yeah, probably. I mean, if you're looking for a guy to put on the end of your bench, you do want upside, but I see upside with AJ Green. I think they brought him in to be a red zone weapon. The Kyler's not going to have to take the ball in so many times himself. DeAndre Hopkins is going to get the primary coverage. Let him go up. If you get in the red zone, I have a hard time imagining where if you go 3 downs, at least one of those balls is not coming to AJ Green. So at wide receiver 63 on Fantasy Pros, there's a discrepancy there as well. So I think the market is a little bit more bullish on him just in general. Those are Fantasy Pros. Those are PPR draft rankings. So that's obviously going to be for a redraft type scenario. The tight end situation here is not something we are really concerned about. It's Max Williams. I don't expect Kyler to suddenly start throwing to his tight end a lot this year. He's more of a blocking guy, and with all these kind of weapons at wide receiver and running back, there's no real reason for him to do that. So I'm not worried about Max Williams. I'm not concerned about any of the tight ends on this team. So we are going to take a short break, and when we come back, we will talk about the running backs and the defense for the Arizona Cardinals. What's good, IDP Army? It's Jordan Rains, and quickly I want to tell you guys today about the big project I've been working on, the Ultimate IDP Index. The Ultimate IDP Index is the #1 resource for IDP fantasy football players, rookies or veteran for 2021. Inside, you're going to find contract information, tiered IDP rankings, detailed player production profiles going back to 2017, suggested trade values, and a whole lot more, including unique write-ups, unique videos that will only be available within the Ultimate IDP Index. But to me, probably the most valuable thing is the fact that the trade value estimation tool is going to be updated weekly, so you'll always be aware of what a player is worth in your Dynasty League at any given moment. So what are you waiting for? Sign up for the IDP Army Patreon today. Patreon.com/the IDP Army. Join the Black Ops tier and join the IDP Army today. Yo, 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 we are back. Guys, gals, if you aren't an IDP league for fantasy football, first and foremost, fix that. IDP is the way of the future. It's, you're playing with more variables. You're playing the whole game of fantasy football. You've been lied to if you only play offensive fantasy football. There's more goodness out there, trust me. So get in on the IDP index if you guys are looking for something to, get you through that first draft. I might even drop a sleeper best ball draft in the comments down here. We'll have to see. That may or may not be the case, but if it is, feel free to join that. Come do your best to win some IDP, an IDP league, and in best ball, it gives you an opportunity to do something different. So anyway, let's get back to the actual task at hand here. The Arizona Cardinals running back situation comes down to two guys essentially. We have James Conner, who they brought in, like I said, and we have Chase Edmonds. Chase Edmonds is getting a lot of hype right now. A lot of people really seem to like Chase Edmonds. I'm not a huge believer in all of the hype. I mean, he's been there 2 years now, 3 years now. So he's been there every year that Cliff Kingsbury's been there, and Cliff Kingsbury has never given him 100 carries. So the idea that he's just going to come in and suddenly just kind of take over and like he's the guy, I don't know what that's based on really. People say he's a great pass catcher. I mean, yeah, he's good. He's not like he's any super better than James Conner, though. I mean, James Conner's been targeted in his career 153 times, has caught 124 of those. Compare that to Chase Edmonds, 111 targets, 85 receptions. So, I mean, Conner's had more targets, has a higher catch percentage. His yards per catch are almost identical. Chase Edmonds had 1 year where he was just slightly over. So I don't know I don't really think that the Chase Edmonds hype is necessarily appropriate. James Conner is also only 25 years old. That's like the age that Zeke is. That's the age, or I think Zeke's even older than that. So, I mean, it's just what you see and what you think you see with James Conner, and the reality of the situation is that he's going to be a value for you this year. He's right now ranked as in Fantasy Pros consensus running back 36. And Chase Edmonds is running back 26. That's a huge value discrepancy right there. And it's even reflected in his best ball ADP. Chase Edmonds ADP in best ball is 69, RB 27. James Conner right now is 108, RB 36. So, if you're looking at one of these pseudo zero RB sort of drafts, you need to be getting James Conner. Just look at what the damage Kenyon Drake did last year. 239 rushing attempts, 959 yards, 10 touchdowns. I mean, there are rushes available back here. And Chase Edmonds admittedly has said, like, I'm not going to be a 20 rush kind of guy. He knows he's not going to be that kind of guy. So there's value to be had with James Conner on this team right now. Do not sleep on what James Conner can bring to your fantasy team this year. And I'm going to be fading Chase Edmonds personally. So take that as you will. All right, let's talk about these linebackers now. So hot young team, the Arizona Cardinals. They have two hot young linebackers. They drafted last year, both first-round picks. Both the first picks of their first round in the Cliff Kingsbury era have been linebackers. They took Isaiah Simmons, who came out of Clemson last year, and they took Zaven Collins, who came out of Tulsa this year, both in the top 20 overall picks. This essentially is going to force out Jordan Hicks, who came over from the Eagles, who had the overall linebacker 1 season 2 years ago on this team. This team is questionable on defense. They do have some playmakers, but they're not necessarily able to slow teams down, if that makes sense. So you get a lot of tackles on this team available to you. So what do we like here? Isaiah Simmons, what we like is the fact that he had 11 impact plays on less than 600 snaps last year. That's extremely good. And he was able to put up 54 tackles on limited play time. So for a guy that was not on the field a lot, 2 pass deflections, an interception, 4 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. I mean, those aren't scrub impact plays. Those aren't forced fumble recovery type situations where he just got lucky. These are actual plays being made by the player. So we like what we see here from Isaiah Simmons. He's currently in the ultimate IDP index. Let me double check here where I've got him. He is in my tier 4 beast mode tier. It's probably a little low, but that's an every week starter right now. That's in the same tier as Zaven Collins. He's coming in. They both have pass rushing chops. They both have coverage chops. So if they can get this defense going, it's going to run through these middle linebackers, but that's going to open up a lot of stuff for, the veteran presence that they have on this defensive line, where they added J.J. Watt this offseason. J.J. Watt, people might try and tell you he's washed. Completely untrue. Did he have gaudy sack numbers last year? No, he didn't, but he still had gaudy numbers in general. 52 total tackles. That's what you want to see. That's really good. 14 tackles for loss. That tied Aaron Donald, who got Defensive Player of the Year this year. He gets 7 pass deflections. That's an extremely high number. He always gets those as a defensive line player. The sacks were the only thing that was missing from his profile this season. The impact plays were still intact. 2 forced fumbles, and he looks healthy and he looks ready to go. So he's going to be a huge boon to this line where they already have Chandler Jones. Now, 2020 was not a good year for Chandler Jones. He started out the year slow, admittedly, and then he hurt himself in week 5. So he didn't have a very big stat sheet this last year. But if you look back to 2019, just 1 year previously, 19 sacks. He was half a sack away from being a sack leader, 11 tackles for loss, 8 forced fumbles. I believe that tied TJ Watt that season to lead the league. 5 pass deflections as well, 42 solo tackles, 11 assists, 26 quarterback hits. He was a busy boy, and he was a legitimate Defensive Player of the Year candidate 2 years ago. It was a really big year for the defensive line. They ended up giving it to Stephon Gilmore, but he hasn't really lost a step. I don't really know what to attribute the early kind of slow start for him in the beginning of last year, but I'm still in on Chandler Jones. He's an extreme value right now in most of your leagues. If you look at his rankings right now, he's DL 35 consensus overall. That's a little bit low in my mind. Or I'm sorry, I'm looking at JJ Watt. That's low for JJ Watt too. But you're going to get value out of both of these players because they are quote unquote old. So don't be afraid to take Chandler Jones and TJ Watt this year. And then let's go ahead and talk about, Marcus Golden is also there. I do want to briefly bring him up. Jordan Phillips is there. I want to briefly bring them up. These guys aren't going to be every week starters for you unless it's a very deep type of dynasty league. And then they also have that pass rusher, Dennis Garadek. He was extremely efficient. Don't know if he can keep it up, but I know they kept him around, and Hassan Reddick is gone. So if something were to happen to one of these edge rushers, or if they are coming off the field, you do have a guy coming in who has proven himself to be extremely efficient. He's not going to be a starter, but he will be there for you. And in the last position, which is probably where they have one of the best players in the whole NFL, is the defensive back position. We're talking about Budda Baker. Budda Baker, guys, gals, if you don't know, you need to know. He is one of the best defensive backs in the entire NFL. He is an extreme tackle monster. He is the new Honey Badger in my mind. 118 tackles this last year. For any defensive back, 118 is good. But the thing is, the year previously, 147. He had the most solo tackles in the NFL just the year before that. His impact plays are not super duper duper high, but they're good enough. He had 7 this last year as far as tackles for loss, 6 pass deflections. You like to see that. Has 2 first career interceptions this last year as well. We love Budda Baker. He's our defensive back 2 right now in the Ultimate IDP Index. He's defensive back 2 coming into the season. The only reason he's not 1 is because he doesn't have the impact play upside that Jamal Adams has. Even though his tackle rate is just a teeny bit higher across his career. The fact that Jamal Adams can get home for the sacks, the big plays for you, and the tackle for loss numbers, and he's getting better at that every single year, noticeably, gives him a slight edge. But do not sleep on Budda Baker. He is a great defensive back in the NFL. Follow him on Twitter. He's funny. He's always got something to say. He's a good guy too. He's a drippy ass dude. So we love Budda Baker around here. So, guys, gals, that is the team preview for the Arizona Cardinals. I'm projecting this team to be similar to last year. They were finished 8-8. I don't see them going more than 10-7, and that's being generous. They've got their work cut out for them. So we need to see the defense as a whole mesh. We need to see Kyler take a step forward as a passer. And we need to see these running backs really establish themselves as the 1 and the 2 quickly out the gates. And if this team can find its identity early, I think they're in a good spot, but we'll just have to see. So, all right, IDP Army, that's everything from me. Make sure you subscribe to the show if you're listening on podcast form. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. You need to be watching us on YouTube. That's where we party. So, all right, until next time, I'm out of here, y'all.
Let the rain hit the sand. Build a house on a rock, got a plan. Gotta get stocks, keep them bands. Hear the clock tick, blades on the fan. Used to be mundane on a Monday. Now you have fun day on a Sunday. Cause you switching it up and you living it up. You ain't getting enough, now you're picking it up.